Today we're going to continue exponents, and we're going to work on the quotient and expanded power rule, which is just the power rule with like a distribution within it. So if you can, go ahead and box in your 3 algebraic equations for your paper, because it's not boxed in and the copy didn't come out very good. So make sure to box these in real quick. All right, let's go ahead and do the examples that we have. So using the rules that we learned, again, this one we pretty much learned it last semester, but we're kind of revisiting it. So the quotient rule tells us if we have the same base, we subtract the exponent, so 9 minus 6. So we have 5 to the power of 3. And we can do 5 times 5 times 5 is 125. This is an easy one to simplify. Next one, we have the same base, negative 8, which means we can subtract 5 and 3, which simplifies to negative 8 to the power of 2. This one we can also simplify. Negative 8 times negative 8 is positive 64. Same thing for the next one, same base w. We can subtract 8 minus 8. That gives me w to 0. Anything to the 0 power is always 1. Let's move on. X, we've got to be careful with those negatives. So negative 7 minus 3. That's x to the negative 10. We're done with that one. Next one, 5. 9 minus, and we have to be careful with this one because the exponent at the bottom is negative and we're subtracting a negative, so that creates a double negative. And this gives me negative is positive, so 9 plus 3 is 12. This is 5 to the 12th. I'm not going to evaluate it because that's going to be a very, very, very large number. Last one here, 5. 6 minus 12. Be very careful with this one because the answer is negative 6, so 5 to the negative 6. All right, that's pretty much it for that first section. Let's go to the next section. It says tell whether the statement is correct or incorrect. So let's look at them. So using the product rule, because we're multiplying, we add the exponents. 3 plus 0, and we get 7 to the third, and that's equal to the right side, which is 7 to the third. So this one checks off. The statement is correct. Let's move on to number 2. We can't add, subtract, or multiply anything here, so we have to individually evaluate everything. So we're going to do 2 times 100 because 10 squared is 100, plus 3 times 1 because 10 to the first, or 10 to the 0 is 1. 2 times 100 is 200, plus 3, which is 203, and that's equal to the right side. So that checks off. This is a true statement. It's correct. Next one, we're going to evaluate the right side. So 0 minus 4. And the 0 does nothing to the negative 4 or the minus 4, so it's just 7 to the negative 4. And the right side drops the same. So this is a true statement, so this is another yes here. Let's go ahead and move on to the next ones. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at this one. We have to use the product rule because we're multiplying two bases that are the same. So it's 5 plus, and here we have a negative 2. So we just subtract in this case because positive times a negative is negative. So it's 8 to the third, which is not equal to 8 to the negative 10. So this is one of those distractor ones. It looks like it's going to be yes because you're like, yeah, 5 times negative 2 is negative 10. But this is not the product rule. It would have to look like this, a power to a power. So that does not equal the letter J. All right, K, let's go ahead and use our quotient rule. We're going to subtract 7 with a negative 10, so there's a double negative created. Double negative is adding, so we get 17, which is equal to the right side, so this one's another yes. Correct. This one we're going to have to simplify both sides. Left side we're going to use the power rule. 4 times 5 is negative 20. Right side we're going to subtract 6, and remember we have an invisible 1, so we subtract 1 minus 21. Which gives us negative 20. So this one we have another yes, correct statement. So we use both the power rule and the quotient rule here. All right, let's go ahead and do a few more examples at the bottom. So we have M through R, so let's take one at a time. Here's the ones you're going to do combinations of all the rules to simplify. So in letter M, we are going to be using both the product rule and the quotient rule. So I'm not going to do the in-between steps. We're just going to add and subtract and multiply as needed. So top, we're going to be combining these by adding. That's the power rule, product rule, I'm sorry. So that's going to be x to the power of 13 over x to the 8. Denominator stays alone. and don't change it yet. Now we're going to use a quotient rule. Subtract 13 and 8. 13 minus 8 is going to give me 5, and I'm done. All right, n is just the power rule in distribution to the top and the bottom. So that 6 belongs to both the numerator and the denominator, which means we use the power rule. If you want to write this in between step, you can. You don't have to. That's what's really happening here. It's given to both the top and the bottom. If you guys want to skip that step, that's perfectly fine. So 5 times 6 is 30. And 3 times 6 is 18. And that's an n. And we are done. We cannot subtract the 30 and the 18 because we have different bases. M and n are not the same. We cannot subtract them. All right, O, we're going to go ahead and start with the power rule. And then we're going to use the quotient rule. And then we can use the product rule. Actually, we should do the product rule first. Let's start off with the inside. They have the same base. That means we can add those exponents. So 7 plus 3 is 10. We keep our power of 4 over 2 to the 10. Now we can go ahead and use the power rule, 10 times 4, so it's going to be 2 to the 40th over 2 to the 10th. Now we can use the quotient rule and subtract 40 and 10, and we get 2 to the 30th. So in this case, we used all 3 of our rules. Let's go ahead and go to P. We are going to go ahead and make sure we distribute the 2 as a power to every single term. Do not forget to distribute this 2 to the 4 and to the 7. They both get that power of 2 as well. Common mistake is to forget that. So 4 squared. A, 3 times 2 is 6. B, 4 times 2 is 8. Bottom, 7 squared. A, 6 times 2 is 12. And this one also, the B has a 1 as well. So B of 1 times 2 is just B squared. Now we're going to use the quotient rule to simplify and just square the numbers. So it's going to be 16 over 49. A is going to be 6 minus 12 is going to be negative 6. B, 8 minus 2, quotient rule again. We're going to get 6. All right, let's go ahead and move on to Q. Start off with the power rule on the section with the parentheses. We're going to have x to the 5th, and we just change the color so we can distinguish. X to the 5th times 2 to the 4th, y to the 4th, and z to the 4th. Remember, everything gets the power of 4. Denominator stays the same. Now we just kind of have to start rearranging at this point. The only things that are going to be simplified at this point are combining those x's and the values on the numbers. So in this case, I have x to the 5th and x to the 5th. I could use a quotient rule and subtract and get 0, and then it becomes a 1, or I can just eliminate them since they're the same. So 2 to the 4th is next. So 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8, times 2 is 16. So that 2 to the 4th becomes a 16. I have y to the 4th, z to the 4th, all over 8. And I can actually simplify 16 divided by 8. That's going to become 2y4 and z4. All right, let's go on to our last problem and be done. So we're going to start with the power rule. So it's going to be 4 squared, x to the 10, because 5 times 2, y squared, over x squared, y 3 times 2 is 6. And then we are going to copy this one as we see it. Now we just have to simplify this whole thing. We're going to do 4 times 10 is 40, divided by 5 is 8. Let's look at all our x's. We have x10 at the top. We have 2 at the bottom, so it's going to be 10 minus 2 minus 2. Or we can say 2 2's at the bottom are 4, or 10 minus 4. That's going to be 6, so it's x to the 6. Now for our y's, we have 2 and 2 at the top. That means we have 4 at the top. And at the bottom we have 6 and 3. That means we have 9 at the bottom. So it's going to be 4 minus 9, which is going to be negative 5. Did we take care of everything? So we got all our y's, we got all our x's, and we have our number. So we are finished with this one as well. All right, go ahead and start your practice and submit your online assignment as well. Good luck.